Hello everyone. This is How Big Is Your Universe channel. In this episode, there will be a quick overview of string theory and Yogacara Buddhism, after which it will be shown that string theory is a mathematical version of Yogacara Buddhism. The diagram on the left was drawn after 1995. It shows dualities among superstring theories and M theory. The diagram on the right was drawn in year 1927 by Tai Su, who was a scholar and a practitioner of Yogacara Buddhism. It was 68 years before the M theory diagram. The two diagrams explain exactly same thing but with completely different terms. For example, one calls string vibrating in 6 extra dimensions while the other calls seeds of first 6 consciousness. One calls M theory with 11th dimension and the other calls 8th consciousness. Lastly, one call 5 superstrings and the other calls 5 effects. There are more. We will cover the comparisons with details later. This is one of many proofs that string theory is a mathematical version of Yogacara Buddhism. String theory is a theory that is supposed to unify general relativity and quantum mechanics. It is also supposed to be the theory of everything. However, there are many mysteries surrounding string theory. The previous diagram shows 5 superstrings. Why are there 5 versions of everything? Nobody knows. String theory requires fixed number of dimensions, otherwise the mathematical model will collapse. The numbers are fixed to be 26 and 10. There are also extra dimensions of 22, 6, 7, or even 8. The answers to the questions on where and what these extra dimensions are in addition to the 4 space-time dimensions are highly debatable. String theory also predicts or requires objects like brains to exist. What are these brains and where they are? Nobody knows. String theory is not just one theory but a collection of many mathematical conjectures. After more than 50 years, nobody knows what are these conjectures and their purposes. Among them is a conjecture which is extremely useful, but it predicts a contracting universe which is not what we experience. Other strange phenomena are gravity appears automatically without matter, and the requirement of almost infinite parallel universes. It will be shown here that all the above mathematical conjectures and objects in string theory are essential components of Yogacara Buddhism. String theory, being the only candidate of the theory of everything, is simply trying to describe anything and everything in the universe. Similarly, Yogacara Buddhism, as we will learn more later, is also about theory of everything, but the term used is all dharmas of the universe, where dharmas means laws. We shall start from what is the meaning of universe. Our modern view of the universe can be traced to geocentric model. After hundreds of years, heliocentric model became the standard in 16th century. By 17th century, the accepted model then was one described by Newton's law of universal gravitation. Early 20th century, Einstein taught us general relativity. The entire universe exists through the warping of space-time fabric in the presence of matter and energy. When Einstein introduced general relativity, scientists thought the universe was static. But very soon, this view was proven wrong by observatory data. The universe is expanding. Current view of the universe is supported not only by observation and the data collected, but also by 2 greatest theories. They are called the greatest discoveries of mankind: general relativity by Einstein and quantum mechanics, co-founded by many great physicists. They have been tested and applied repeatedly and proven to be extremely accurate. With further observation, scientists realize that the universe might not have boundaries. There are countless galaxies, and within galaxies are objects like black holes, nebulae, stars, and planets. Scientists also told us that our universe began 14 billion years ago in an incident named the Big Bang. However, the latest data sent from the newly launched James Webb Telescope tells us that scientists might have to relook at the Big Bang model and the 14 billion years assumption. On the other hand, years ago, Sir Roger Penrose proposed a different model of the universe. He calls it conformal cyclic cosmology, where the universe has an infinite past and future. It has gone through many cycles of formation and destruction. The prevailing view of the universe is a physical universe, where everything works based on law of physics. To Buddhism, The physical universe we live in, is only the co-created and shared universe. It has an infinite past and future, and it has gone through infinite cycles of formation and destruction, similar to what Sir Roger Penrose proposed. To Buddhism, the real universe is each conscious being's universe. Therefore, it is not geocentric, nor heliocentric, but being-centric. In order to understand the difference between being-centric universe and the co-created shared physical universe in Buddhism, one has to understand the law of Buddhism. To Buddhism, every being is nothing more than a collection of 5 things, which is called the 5 aggregates. A collection of a set of 5 aggregates itself is considered to encompass the entire law of the universe. For example, An is a collection of 5 aggregates, and An is considered a universe. Milo is also a collection of 5 aggregates, and Milo is also considered a universe. Yogacara Buddhism goes further in explaining that An lives in her own universe which she created. Milo also lives in his own universe he created. There are 2 completely different universes. But because of common karma, the 2 look extremely similar. Therefore, they thought they live in the same universe. One of the 5 aggregates is the forms aggregates, which is matter or physical world. This forms aggregates is the universe that is co-created and shared. The Buddha introduced us to the 5 aggregates. The sequence taught then was form aggregates, sensations aggregates, perceptions aggregates, mental formations aggregates, and consciousness aggregates. This is the same sequence in the famous Heart Sutra, and it has been used until today. 900 years later, Vasubandhu, who is a key founder of the Yogacara Buddhism, introduced a new sequence in his famous work called the Mahayana Sattadharma Prakasamukha Sastra. It is otherwise known as the 100 Dharmas. In 100 Dharmas, Vasubandhu placed consciousness as the first position, as it is the most important. Additionally, instead of 6 consciousness, there are now 8 consciousness. They are said to control everything. It is followed by the aggregates of mental formations, sensations, and perceptions. These 3 are said to arise at the same time as consciousness. Form aggregates is now placed at the bottom position, as it is the product of the other 4 aggregates. There is a category of law which includes, among other things, space, time, and speed, called the non-interactive. This category is considered fake laws compared relatively to the 5 aggregates. The new sequence, as explained by Vasubandhu, shows clearly that form aggregates, or the co-created and shared physical universe, are the results of mental factors. This is what Max Planck said a century ago: I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness. We cannot get behind consciousness. General relativity and quantum mechanics are the 2 main pillars explaining the laws of the universe, and their combination is considered as theory of everything so far. On the other hand, the pillar explaining the law of the universe in Buddhism is the 5 aggregates. In this case, the worldview of Buddhism is not only fundamentally different from the view of modern science, but it contradicts what we experience and the scientific principles and foundation. In addition, there are infinite beings in the universe. As the model in Buddhism is a being-centric universe, then there must be infinite universes. Interestingly, science in recent years proposed multiple world interpretation and parallel universes in string theory. This is no coincidence. To appreciate the gaps, we must start with general relativity and quantum mechanics. They are thought to be the greatest achievements, yet they cannot work together. They are mutually exclusive. You can't find quantum component in general relativity, and you can't find gravity in quantum mechanics. They are even repulsive, as general relativity is local theory whereas quantum mechanics is non-local. One explains the largest scale while the other explains the smallest scale. Everything now in the universe must be explained by 2 separate theories which are completely different. That is not reasonable and not consistent. Therefore, the search of a consistent unified theory is the primary goal for theoretical physicists in the past decades. The dream of unification started with Einstein, where he tried to unify gravity with electromagnetic force. But after Einstein, physicists have found weak force and strong force in addition to electromagnetic force. These three has been incorporated into quantum field theory. To unify general relativity, search for quantized gravity or quantum gravity is key. It is now the right time to have an overview of string theory. String theory is not just one, two, or three theories but is a framework consisting of many mathematical conjectures and objects. It started in 1968 where a theory which wasn't intended to be a unified theory was found to contain graviton, which is the quantum gravity everyone was looking for. This is called the bosonic string theory. But it has many problems. First, it requires many dimensions. There are a total of 26 dimensions. After taking away 4 spacetime, there are 22 extra dimensions. These 22 extra dimensions are nowhere to be found. Second, it can only explain bosons, which are only carriers of forces. It can't explain fermions, which are the building blocks of all matter and our physical universe. Third, it is infested with tachyons whose existence or appearance will annihilate ordinary matter and makes a physical system highly unstable. Therefore, it was discarded. Fortunately, under the persistence of two physicists, Michael Green and John Swartz, they found solutions to the above problems in 1984. This is the first version of a consistent theory. The dimensions required now is 10 much lesser than 26. After taking away 4 space-time dimensions, there are 6 extra dimensions. Because this version possesses supersymmetric property, it is called the supersymmetric string theory, or in short superstring. The dream of Einstein was finally achieved. But very soon physicists found out that there is not one theory, two, but 5 consistent versions of theory of everything. Everyone explains almost everything but not quite everything. To date, nobody understands why there are 5 versions of everything. All these 5 versions have extremely tiny strings vibrating in 6 extremely tiny extra dimensions. All particles in the universe can be explained with different vibrations. In order to contain this space, the famous Calabi-Yau manifolds is used. In 1995, Edward Witten came to the rescue. He introduced M-theory, which kind of unify the 5 versions, but an extra dimension is required. The universe now has 11 dimensions instead of 10. But M-theory hasn't really unified the 5 versions. One of the 5 versions still need to be used in one situation while another version is used in another situation. There is another F-theory which is not introduced by science channels. It is dual to M-theory and dual to one of the 5 superstrings, which is type 2b. There is yet another extra dimension. Their universe now has 12 dimensions instead of 11. After taking away 4 spacetime, there are a total of 8 extra dimensions. These extra dimensions can be extremely tiny, yet they could also be infinitely big. Each of the extra dimensions has different characteristics. Other than strings, brains are another required objects in string theory. Initially, when they were found, physicists thought they were redundant. But now they are very critical part of string theory with many important calculations done on them. AD-CFT correspondence is the most valuable of all. It predicts 2 universes. One side of it is called anti-de Sitter space, which is a contracting universe with only gravity. The other side is called conformal field theory, which is an expanding universe like ours with only quantum field theory. Each side is completely different, but strangely each side can reconstruct the complete results on the other side mathematically. Many problems that are difficult to be solved on one side, can be easily solved on the other. 2 completely different sides, yet they are the same, and it is so useful. What is it? Nobody knows. Lastly, one of the results of AD-CFT correspondence has shown us that we could be a projection of information on the boundary space of the 2 sides, which is a universal hologram. Even the most prominent string theorists do not know what string theory is. David Gross, a Nobel laureate, said, "You can't put string theory on a t-shirt because we don't know what the equations are. We don't know the organizing principle." There is a very ill-understood M-theory generalization. String theory is not a theory but a framework. Edward Witten, who discovered M-theory, which is part of and the most important string conjectures, said, I just think too many nice things have happened in string theory for it to be all wrong. Humans do not understand it very well, but I just don't believe there is a big cosmic conspiracy that created this incredible thing that has nothing to do with the real world. Clifford Johnson, who is actively working on string theory, treats string theory as a bunch of toolboxes. On the other hand, there are many physicists object, some violently, against string theory, saying that it is not even wrong. So, what is string theory? To understand what string theory is, we must understand Yogacara Buddhism. Edward Witten is the central figure in string theory with his M theory, which is pivotal to all the conjectures mentioned above. The central figure in Yogacara Buddhism is Xuanzang in the Tang dynasty. He integrated various interpretations of Yogacara Buddhism into his work called Chenwei Shi Lun, which means the complete theory of consciousness only. String theory is a mathematical version of Xuanzang's work Chenwei Shi Lun. We shall now have an overview of Yogacara Buddhism. First, it is important for us to understand Buddhism. When it comes to theory of everything, Buddhism, especially Yogacara Buddhism, is the ultimate megamall of theories of everything. There are 10 dharmas, or laws, listed here. Each is a theory of everything. Why are there so many theories of everything? First, Buddhism is not only about the physical world as shown but also the psychological world as explained. Second, to Buddhism, explaining phenomena, or outcomes, or results, or effects, are not the most important, but the study and understanding of causes are more important. Third, there are ontological aspects of laws which current science have not seen or understood. We will cover some of these aspects later. Therefore, each of the 10 theories of everything covers causes, effects, and ontological layer in different proportion and details. Therefore, there are so many theories of everything. All theories of everything are highly integrated and related with very tight and intricate structure. For example, sensations, which is one of the 5 aggregates, though occupies only one element, but is related to 5 of the 22 indriyas. Another example is, the 5 aggregates can appear as any one of the 5 effects. Yet another example is the form and formless beings in the 3 realms will not have the anger factor, which is one of the 49 mental formations of the 5 aggregates. There are many interlinkages and connections that are extremely well defined. Some, like the 5 aggregates, can be both effects and causes. Some focus mainly on causes, like cause conditions. Some, like 12 dependent origination, focuses on much longer-term cause-effect relationship. That is why there are so many theories of everything. Now let us dig into Yogacara Buddhism. We shall be covering the concepts listed here in order to understand both Yogacara Buddhism and string theory. We have covered the 100 dharmas with the 5 aggregates. Next, we need to understand what consciousness is. To Yogacara Buddhism, consciousness is not the product of the brain functions. Our brains and even our sense organs are only illusion, which will be explained shortly. Consciousness, in lack of better words, is a form of universal energy or fundamental energy. There is not just one consciousness as what we normally think as mind consciousness, but there are 8 consciousness. Each of the 8 consciousness is different. There can be thought of as 8 different types of energies. How these 8 consciousness come into existence or function is through arisen or activation of seeds. It is important to note that current science view of consciousness is in the neurons and the functions of the brain, whereas the view on Yogacara Buddhism is completely different. As we will learn very soon, Yogacara Buddhism explains consciousness in block diagrams, which, using analogy, is more like design of motherboard with processor chips. Everyone, in this case, and has an 8th consciousness. 8th consciousness has many functions. One of the functions is the management of storage of seeds. All information about N is her 8th consciousness. Unlike conventional wisdom, N doesn't see the apple by her eye organ, gets into contact with the apple. It is when conditions are suitable or met, and seeds of eye consciousness of an apple arises or get activated. The seeds then activates her eye consciousness. Her eye consciousness then splits into a visual function and an image function at the same time. The image function is what the apple looks like to her. The visual function of her eye consciousness then interact with the content in the image function. That's how N sees an apple. An important point to note is that, according to Yogacara Buddhism, what N sees in the image function is created by the eighth consciousness which took the information from the substance. The substance is managed by the seeds in her eighth consciousness. What N sees might not really be an apple, or there is no such thing called apple. The same process applies to ear, nose, tongue, and body consciousness. Mind consciousness works slightly differently, but let us keep it simple, assuming the same process. At the end, it is the mind consciousness which assembles all the information from the above five consciousness, and it is called an apple. Our brain functions and an apple external to us are only illusion, which will be explained later. All these consciousness are not the functions of the brains but some kind of energies, or as mentioned closer to block diagram design of a motherboard than the functions of neurons in the brain. The reason why we think the brain or sense organs are working is due to a number of functions of seeds and eighth consciousness. When seeds get activated, it is called phenomena, or effect, which include consciousness. For example, N's eye consciousness. Basically, phenomena and consciousness must arise together at the same time. The phenomena lasts for an extremely short split second and it vanishes immediately. But before the phenomena vanishes, it perfumes the seeds. In the next split second, the seeds get activated and the cycle continues. Basically, the perfuming function is altering the content or information in the seeds. Seeds and the arisen phenomena both have reciprocal effect on each other. Another important function of eighth consciousness is to create and maintain an inner body image at the same time. It also creates an external world. These two, inner body and external world, are part of the phenomena. It is hard to believe, but let us think about metaverse. Seeds are like program codes, the player is equivalent to N's eye consciousness, and the metaverse projects the image of N and the world external to N. We feel effect when there is an operations performed on the brain. It is because the reciprocal effects are taking place so fast, just like in the metaverse. It is important to note that string theorists think that particles are made up by strings. In Yogacara Buddhism, seeds and phenomena are neither the same nor different. It is like program codes and effect of metaverse. Therefore, particles which are phenomena are not strings, they are neither the same nor different. This is a crucial understanding which we will learn in the discussion of gravity. This is another block diagram in Yogacara Buddhism, and a very crucial one because all the details here appear in string theory. There is a total of 8 consciousness. Each has different function, with the 8th consciousness being the most important. These 8 are also called kings of hearts, which basically means they each can gather information like processor chips. As each has different functions, the functions they gather are also different. 8th consciousness has many names because it has many different functions. It is popularly known as Alaya consciousness, which means warehouse of seeds. The seeds are said to be inside 8th consciousness itself. In order to manage all these seeds, 8th consciousness creates a visual function which take the seeds within 8th consciousness as image function. After the arisen of 8th consciousness, it triggers 7th consciousness. 7th consciousness is also known as Manas consciousness, which is the source of our feeling of I. In Yogacara Buddhism, every consciousness has a dependent root. Since 7th consciousness is triggered by 8th consciousness, it takes root in 8th consciousness. But 7th consciousness in turn becomes the root of 8th consciousness. 7th consciousness also creates a visual function which take images of the visual function of 8th consciousness as image function. This is the first image function. Additionally, 7th consciousness creates another image function of I, which is its second image function. Therefore, 7th consciousness has 2 image functions. The next get triggered are the first 6 consciousness. To cut it short, 6th consciousness has root in 7th consciousness. Note that all functions of the 5 aggregates arise from seeds. The first 4 are mental factors, with the last one physical. As we shall see shortly, strings in string theory are seeds. What string theorists have gotten so far are just the last one, which is the forms aggregates. Let us dig further in. The bottom left of the diagram shows the work by Taisu in 1927. 68 years before the M-theory diagram. This diagram is obtained from the upper diagram, which provides a very detailed definition of cause conditions. Cause conditions is an extremely important concept in Buddhism. Basically, all phenomena in the universe come from cause conditions. The difference is that science or our understanding is that an old phenomena will produce another new phenomena. We might think of the old phenomena as cause conditions, and the new phenomena as the effect, but this is not the view of Buddhism. The difference lies in cause conditions in Buddhism are hidden and ontological, something that cannot be seen. They are in the forms of hidden seeds or hidden causes. Therefore, old phenomena can only lead to new phenomena through cause conditions, which many are hidden. Phenomena are also called effect. There are 5 types of effects in Buddhism because they are arisen differently from the underlying cause conditions. The 5 effects can be seen as effects, but viewed from another angle they can also be causes. When they are causes, through the cause conditions, they produce different effects. This relationship is called dualities using terminology of string theory. This is the purpose of Taisu when drawing this diagram. According to Buddhism, though all cause conditions are important and required, the most important one is direct cause. Direct cause are seeds in eighth consciousness that will produce its own effect. For example, seeds of I consciousness of N in N's eighth consciousness. There are other seeds that will not produce N's consciousness. Those are seeds that are not from direct cause. The effect from the seeds of direct cause are called effect of same order. Hence, effect of same order is very crucial. Its counterpart is type 2b string, which we shall see appears in many important string conjectures and application. Let us call this diagram -1. It is now ready for comparison. String theory is supposed to be a theory of everything, and everything is about phenomena or effect in Buddhism. Effect in Buddhism comes in 5 flavors, which are called 5 effects. That is why string theory has 5 superstrings. On the left is Taisu's diagram drawn in 1927. For ease of comparison, each of the 5 effects in Buddhism is tagged the corresponding superstrings. Note that item 8 is about eighth consciousness in Yogacara Buddhism, which is M theory in string theory. It means when conditions are right, the seeds arises from eighth consciousness. On the right, it is the duality diagram of M theory drawn after 1995, 68 years after Taisu's diagram, with 5 superstrings. Similarly, each of the 5 superstrings is tagged with the corresponding 5 effects. Note that each set of the 5 effects is about just one conscious being. It is a being's universe, not the entire co-created shared physical universe. This is something what string theorists yet to realize. We will be looking at the 10 items which are about cause conditions, and will disregard the types of dualities like S-duality and T-duality because they are more precise. Judging from the diagrams, cause conditions must exist in the mathematics of string theory. At least the direct cause, which we shall see in next diagram, is very clear and obvious. Diagram 1 shows effect of same order, now acting as cause, through direct cause of item 1, 3, and 5, and uninterrupted conditions in item 7, get back effect of same order, as effect. Effect of same order is type 2b string, and that is why type 2b string is dual back to itself. As mentioned, type 2b string is the most important because it is from direct cause. Diagram 2 shows effect ripen divergently and effect of nirvana, now both acting as causes. Through item 2, this seeds assists other types of seeds in producing other types of phenomena, which is a superior conditions, get back effect ripen divergently and effect of nirvana, as effects. Effect ripen divergently and effect of nirvana correspond to SO, 32, heterotic string and type 1 string respectively. That is why there exists a duality between SO, 32, heterotic string and type 1 string. Diagram 3 shows effect ripen divergently, now acting as cause. Through item 2, This seeds assists other types of seeds in producing other types of phenomena, which is a superior conditions, get back effect ripen divergently and superior effect, as effects. Superior effect is E8 times E8 heterotic string. That is why there exists a duality between SO, 32, heterotic string and E8 times E8 heterotic string. Diagram 4 shows man-made effect and superior effect, now both acting as causes, through a combination interactive conditions and superior conditions, get back man-made effect and superior effect, as effects. Note that eighth consciousness is an interactive conditions in diagram -1. In diagram 5, let us look at F-theory. It is said that F-theory is dual to both M-theory and type 2b string. It requires an extra dimension but of which two are curled up dimensions. F-theory is seventh consciousness in Yogacara Buddhism, which is acting as root to both eighth consciousness and sixth consciousness with two image functions. F-theory is dual only to type 2b string because it is the effect of same order, which is the effect of direct cause. With F-theory, there are a total of 8 extra dimensions in string theory, which are the 8 consciousness in Yogacara Buddhism. Diagram 6 shows effect of same order and effect of nirvana, now both acting as causes, through direct cause. Items 3 and 5, get back effect of same order and effect of nirvana, as effect. This is in string theory where type 1 string can be obtained by orientifolding type 2b string. Both SO, 32, heterotic and E8 times E8 heterotic strings are said to be hybrid of type 2 string and bosonic string. The meaning of hybrid is after the crossing, they are more powerful. As mentioned before, bosonic string was discarded because of its many problems. Why do they now become more powerful after type 2 string crossed with bosonic string? We know that bosonic string has 26 dimensions, out of which 22 are extra dimensions. What are these 22 extra dimensions? To get an insight, let us look at Yogacara Buddhism. The two superstrings correspond to effect ripen divergently and superior effect. These two effects are mainly the effects of superior conditions, which are items 2, 4, 6, and 10 listed in diagram -1. According to Taisu, there are innumerable conditions in superior conditions, but the most significant being 22. These 22 are the 22 indriyas. We shall cover 22 indriyas in more details later. The above comparison has shown the following. 1. Strings vibrating in 6 extra dimensions are seeds of first 6 consciousness. 2. 5 versions of superstrings are the 5 effects. 3. F-theory is the 7th consciousness. 4. M-theory is the 8th consciousness. 5. 6 extra dimensions are first 6 consciousness. 6. 22 extra dimensions in bosonic string are 22 indriyas. 7. There are a total of 8 extra dimensions in string theory, which is 8 consciousness. 8. Type 2b, which is effects of same order from direct cause, is the most important and appears in many other mathematical conjectures and application, which we already see in F-theory and orientifold. An extremely important concept, strings are causes where particles are effects, has not been covered. It will be covered during the discussion of gravity. Now let us look at the relationship between 11th dimension of M-theory and strings, and also, the relationship between 8th consciousness and seeds. Suppose that one of the 11 dimension is rolled up into an extremely tiny circle. In that case, a 2 brain that encircles the rolled up circular dimension looks just like a string. Using Buddhist terminology, 11th dimension and string are neither the same nor different. According to the compendium of Mahayana Bhyasanga, are all seeds in 8th consciousness different and reside in a different place, or they are of no difference? It is not it, and seeds are of separate objects. On this note, these are neither the same nor different. This is due to how 8th consciousness is formed, and hence it has the ability to give rise to various functions as seeds, so it is also named as consciousness of all seeds. So, 8th consciousness and seeds are also neither the same nor different. Therefore, there is no coincidence that 11th dimension of M-theory is 8th consciousness whereas strings are seeds. It is said that the 11th dimension of M theory is infinitely long but only a very small distance across, at its maximum size could be something like a trillionth of a millimeter. It exists in every point of the three-dimensional world, and it's closer to the clothes to your body and yet we can't sense it. It is said that eighth consciousness, in Yogacara Buddhism, manages, 1 our inner body, 2 our external world, and 3 all seeds. String theorists still do not know the purpose of M theory, which Yogacara Buddhism has given precise definitions of eighth consciousness. Many theories, for example AD-CFT correspondence, show that holographic principle is one of the fundamental principles of M theory. The hologram in string theory is the substance in Yogacara Buddhism which is maintained by the seeds of eighth consciousness as previously shown. Whatever N experiences, our activation of seeds from N's eighth consciousness and the information in the substance are sources of N's experiences. Therefore, the hologram in string theory is what Yogacara Buddhism calls substance. Yogacara Buddhism has other names for seeds. For example, it is sometimes called various functions. That means seeds must contain various information to produce various functions. It is also called dhatus. This is stated in the compendium of Mahayana by Asanga, where there is a quote of, the Mahayana Abhidharma Sutra, dhatus with an infinite past, has been the source of all dharmas, hence there are samsara, and reaching of nirvana. Seeds or dhatus has been the source of all laws of the universe. Dhatus is said to be 62 dhatus in the Mahayana Abhidharma Sutra, which is an expansion of 18 dhatus, which in turn is expanded from 12 ayatana. This is basic concept in Buddhism. In 62 dhatus, there are many detailed classifications. For example, past, present, and future. This means it is a source of highly structured information. 12 ayatana has 2 parts, the 6 indriyas and 6 objects of consciousness. Each of the indriyas when coming into contact with its corresponding object gives rise to consciousness. For example, when the eye indriya comes into contact with object of eye gives rise to eye consciousness. This leads to the concept of 18 dhatus. But Yogacara Buddhism denies physical sense organs as they are also parts of phenomena as explained before. Consciousness also does not arise from sense organs coming into contact with their respective objects in Yogacara Buddhism, as this part is replaced by function and activation of seeds. Additionally, eighth consciousness, in principle, can also be subsumed into the dhatus of dharmas in 12 ayatana. Therefore, with the above analysis, the information in the substance should be in the 6 object areas of 12 ayatana. In other words, or looked at it from an overall perspective, substance, plus eighth consciousness, plus the seeds in eighth consciousness, are the 12 ayatana. By the same logic, the following equivalent can be said. Hologram, plus 11th dimension in M theory, plus strings in M theory, are also the 12 ayatana. This means that the hologram is not an entirely passive realm which has some hidden active elements. This is a crucial point which we shall see this later in AD-CFT correspondence. String theory is able to produce accurate results in black holes, which is a place where general relativity must work together with quantum mechanics. This is conclusive evidence that string theory is truly a theory of unification. To calculate black holes, string theorists normally start off with type 2b string, sometimes followed by type 2a string. It was mentioned before type 2b string is effect of same order. It was also mentioned before that effect of same order is the effect from direct cause. An example was previously given that effects from direct causes are the seeds of consciousness, for example seeds of eye consciousness, of N which will produce N's direct experiences. If that is the case, as black hole calculation starts with type 2b string, does it make black hole a conscious being? The answer is affirmative. Yes, black holes are conscious beings. We have to put the clock back to the year 628. Xuanzang traveled to the west, which is today's India, looking for Yogacara Bhumi Sastra by Maitreya. This is an extremely crucial text of Yogacara Buddhism. In this text, there are extensive descriptions of beings which are form beings and formless beings. Form beings have only ordinary matter, not the carbon-based beings like human and animals. Their sizes are said to be extremely large with lifespans that are astronomically long. There are 4 levels in the form realm. The higher up they are, the larger they are and with longer lifespans. They are considered to be upper realm to human and animals, which means, our worlds have to depend on theirs. Above the form beings, are the formless beings. They do not have ordinary matter but have remnants of matter. Similarly, there are also 4 levels. Also, the higher up they are, the larger in sizes they are, and with longer lifespans. The lifespan of the top formless being is said to be 80,000 eons. Much longer than 14 billion years. The beings in these 2 upper realms are very important part of Yogacara Buddhism for many reasons. One of reasons being their states are the standards for our meditation. This is the concept of 3 realms. Xianzang summarized Yogacara Buddhism with the phrase, the 3 realms are heart only, all laws are consciousness only. This means all the beings in the 3 realms share the same architecture of the hearts, which are the 8th consciousness, especially the 8th consciousness. And the fundamental law of the universe is consciousness, or all the laws in the universe is only through our consciousness in understanding them. Question is, where are the form beings and formless beings? They are right in front of us. Yogacara Bhumi Sastra has extensive descriptions of these beings. Together with the desire beings like us, which are the 3 realms, there is a division of 9 bhumi or 9 grounds or 9 places. It is said that if a human being practices meditation on 2nd Jhana industriously, he will be born into the bhumi of 2nd Jhana in his next life. As the laws are consciousness only, physics is actually a reflection of the mental states of these beings. Due to time constraint, the following is a very brief description. Beings in the desire realm, because of their desires and complex mental factors, their magnetic fields are very chaotic. Beings in the 1st Jhana has discarded worldly desires like us human, they achieved pleasure and satisfaction. Therefore, their magnetic fields are more stable. But because their bhumi is close to the desire realm, their magnetic field is not strong enough. 1st Jhana is separated into 3 levels. Their levels of pleasure and satisfaction vary from weak to strong and their shapes from nothing to full. These beings are various types of planets. Beings in the 2nd Jhana achieve deeper meditation and has lesser mental factors than 1st Jhana, hence their magnetic field is very strong and full. It is said that their pleasure is the strongest of all worldly beings, which means their magnetic fields are the strongest. They are stars. For example, the magnetic field of our Sun extends beyond the entire solar system. There are also 3 levels within 2nd Jhana, which means there are different types of stars. Beings in the 3rd Jhana is tired of pleasure, as pleasure is also a disturbance to the mind. They have discarded pleasure, which means they have discarded their magnetic fields. But they have achieved the strongest satisfaction, which means their electric fields are the strongest of all worldly beings. These are nebulae, as they have discarded their magnetic field, leaving only magnetic field lines which were from their previous lives as stars. Their electric fields are the strongest. There are also 3 levels within 3rd Jhana, which means there are different types of nebulae. Beings in the 4th Jhana are even tired of satisfaction. They further discarded satisfaction and left with indifference and pure thought. Indifference means magnetic monopoles and pure thought is part of mental formations aggregates, which means gravity. These are black holes with strongest gravity. There are many studies that show black holes have magnetic monopoles. There are 9 levels in 4th Jhana, which means there are different types of black holes. So, yes, black holes are conscious beings. Black holes are said to be the top of form beings, above which are formless beings. Formless beings are tired of matter. They meditate discarding matter. Einstein's general relativity contains not only a solution of black hole, there is also a hidden solution of white hole. Black holes are objects where no matter, not even light, can escape, whereas white holes are objects where nothing can get it. It takes us more than 100 years to find black holes. White holes are much harder to be observed. But there is already an incident GRB 060614 being destined to be likely a white hole where an object in the previous life as black hole spewed out matter in the form of gamma ray burst. Therefore, white holes are formless beings. There are different types of formless beings. White holes might well be at the lowest level of all. According to Theravada Buddhism, formless beings are totally without matter, but for Mahayana Buddhism, as long as the mind is still active, there are matter or remnants of matter. White holes are said to likely to be responsible for dark matter. The descriptions of formless beings are said to be of infinite space, infinite margin, and at the margin. These states or forms are due to the way they meditate. They could exist anywhere within the galaxies, intergalactical space, or even the entire universe. The large-scale structures of the universe are said to be built around dark matter, which might be traces of their existence. Because of the way they meditate, the universe is expanding and they should be responsible for the dark energy. As they are the upper or the top beings of the three realms, their proportion and contribution to the universe are much larger than those on the lower realms. That is why dark energy and dark matter are 95% of the entire universe. The ancient language without modern science could only use words that people could understand then. For example, gravity was said to be wind. The formation of the world for us here on earth starts with the arising of will of wind, and there is a birth of a fourth jhana being at the same time. This is the description in Yogacara Buddhism Sastra, which means the birth of a black hole as wind means gravity. This is followed by the will of water, and there is a birth of a third jhana being. This means the birth of a nebula with its electric field. Then there is a rising of will of fire and a second jhana being. Lastly, the birth of various first jhana beings or various planets before the formation of our world is complete. There is also a description on three disasters, starting from fire, to water, to wind. There will be 7 fire disasters, followed by 1 water disaster, after a total of 7 water disasters, which have a total of 49 fire disasters, then followed by a wind disaster. This is what we call stellar evolution today, from stars, nebulae, to black hole. Therefore, black holes are definitely conscious beings at the 4th jhana. In string theory, black holes are said to be 5D objects. That is because in 10-dimensional superstring, 5 dimensions are curled up. These 5 curled up dimensions are the 5 out of the 6 extra dimensions. These 6 extra dimensions have been shown to be the first 6 consciousness in Yogacara Buddhism. In Yogacara Buddhism, 4th jhana beings are said to have only 6th mind consciousness active, with the first 5 consciousness inactive. These first 5 consciousness are obviously the 5 curled up dimensions. String theorist says black holes are the easiest to calculate because 4th jhana beings are form beings with least mental factors and hence least physics, but have matter to be observed. Some physicists think they can create a black hole. The question is, why doesn't a black hole, a star, or planet suddenly appear in our living room, office, or backyard? Physicists will tell you there isn't enough mass or without presence of matter. But is the correct view? Herman Verlinde, a string theorist, said that when they try to find out the smallest constituent of matter and when they zoom into the smallest scale using mathematics, to their surprise, they found gravity, even when they didn't ask for it. Clifford Johnson, who is actively working on string theory, said in string theory, gravity is dictated as a must. You just can't do without gravity. Gravity without matter? Why?
At least one of the reasons why we're now more and more convinced that the holographic principle is really something that works comes indeed from string theory, which is my field. And what happens there is precisely if you go through this step of looking more and more detailed at what happens on shorter and shorter distances, you might be interested in say, what happens inside of our nucleus, inside of our atoms, and there's a nucleus, and there are quarks, and there are smaller and smaller particles. And suppose, again, that for a moment you would want to forget about gravity, but you start looking more carefully at what we're made of. And then because of this idea that when you start looking at smaller and smaller scales, or at least at smaller distances, suddenly you discover that there's actually something new happening. And that something new, at least in terms of your equations, you recognize it as gravity. So the amazing thing is that while you're actually interested in just looking at the smallest constituents of matter without putting gravity in, gravity comes out as something that's sort of inevitable. And to me, there's an enormously deep lesson there. That
interesting mathematical game. String theory was the first time where we wrote down a theory and we said we want it to live in a certain number of dimensions, and these strings have to move around and they must obey the rules that we already know nature likes, which is that it has to be relativistic and quantum mechanical. When you put those two ingredients in, and the theory comes back and it gives you a list of demands, and theories didn't do that before. It comes back and it says, I'm not going to work unless you work in, in the version that's most well understood, unless you work in 10 dimensions and unless you describe gravity. So we put that in. We didn't ask for it to be in a fixed number of dimensions. And we didn't ask for gravity. It came back and told us gravity has to be in the game and you have to have a different number of dimensions than you thought. And that was just historically, and even at the time, was really shocking.
Newton told us in the law of universal gravitation that gravity is an invincible force where every particle attracts every other particle in the universe. Einstein taught us general relativity where gravity is not necessarily a force but warping of space-time fabric in the presence of matter or energy. Our view of the entire universe is based on matter where formations of celestial objects are through gravitational attraction in the presence of matter scattered around in the universe. What is physics with gravity in the absence of matter? Is gravity still physics? There are some critical concepts in Yogacara Buddhism which string theorists are not aware of. In Yogacara Buddhism, seeds are also called causes, or hidden causes. As strings are seeds, strings are also hidden causes. Hidden causes when dormant, we don't know what they are. Strings representing gravity are causes, they are not gravity. They are not effects, which means they are not gravity. When strings representing gravity get activated, and gravitational force is felt, that is effect. This is called same-time cause-effect. There is no time in this split second. There are innumerable hidden causes or seeds in eighth consciousness, hence many hidden strings in M theory. For example, hidden strings, or hidden causes representing gravity. They are called dormant causes, dormant seeds, or dormant strings. These are considered previous causes. When dormant strings get activated and gravity is felt, this is called different time cause effect. What is the meaning of strings representing gravity in M theory in the absence of matter? They are hidden and dormant causes. We now have to quote Xuanzang, who said the three realms with their 9 grounds come into being in accord with the power of karma. In his work, which is verses delineating the 8 consciousness. This means a human being who industriously practice fourth dhyana meditation, he will have the karma, or the hidden gravitational strings, for him to be born into the specific bhumi or ground of fourth dhyana, which is specific for black holes. Why? Because there are segregations among the grounds. Though upper and lower grounds are adjacent, they are also segregated. That is why you should not worry that physicists can create a black hole on Earth. Is there such a concept in string theory called the 3 realms and 9 bhumi? Yes, there is. It is called the anthropic principle. String theorists initially were confident they can find a solution in a Calabi-Yau manifold that describe our universe. But very soon, they found out the number of Calabi-Yau manifold keeps expanding. The number is larger than astronomical. They found 10 to the power of 500, which is 10 followed by 500 zeros, or even 10 followed by 27,000 zeros, or even infinite. They then think there are many parallel universes where ours are so lucky to be around. What they don't know is that one set of string theory, as proven to represent one set of Yogacara Buddhism theory, only describe one universe or one being. There are infinitely many beings in the 3 realms and 9 bhumi, each has own strings or Calabi-Yau manifolds. Therefore, it is not one Calabi-Yau manifold exists but infinitely many Calabi-Yau manifolds exist at the same time. With our deeper understanding of physics, physicists now say that you can never actually touch anything. Why? Briefly, all the bonds, or contact, that we are aware of, are through atoms exchanging electrons. Atoms are made up by quarks, which are fermions. Electrons are also fermions. Based on Pauli's exclusion principle, no two electrons can occupy the same place. Additionally, electrons orbit around atoms in cloud. Therefore, there is simply no physical contact. Then where do we get our sensations from without contact? Are all that we experience illusions? We now have to hear Dignaga, who wrote the critical text of Yogacara Buddhism, which is Alambana Pariksavarti. In this text, he refuted the other schools' views that either atoms, or substance made up by atoms, can provide qualia as our interacting conditions for our consciousness. He argued that when one divides the substance or atom to its smallest constituent, one cannot find qualia such as color, sound, smell, taste, and touch. The views of other schools are similar to the current view of science, which is called the emergence principle. But to date, nobody knows how qualia can emerge. Hence, he concluded that qualia can only arise at the same time and together as interacting conditions for our consciousness. He called it direct interacting conditions. This brings us to brain, a critical object in string theory. In string theory, there are two possible explanations for the location of extra dimensions. First, the extra space dimensions are curled up to incredibly small sizes, so we never perceive them. Second, we are stuck on a three-dimensional brain, and the extra dimensions extend off it and are inaccessible to us. Yogacara Buddhism denies consciousness as function of our brain but activation of seeds of consciousness. For example, seeds of I consciousness. With activation of seeds of I consciousness will split into a visual function and an image function at the same time. The visual function will then interact with the content in the image function. All these descriptions are more like a block diagram and have nothing to do with the brain nor the neurons in the brain. The visual image is always thought of, or drawn as, a two-dimensional surface in Yogacara Buddhism. But when we see through glasses, or we look at the fishes in the pond, or we could hear sound coming from all directions, or we could feel what is below a blanket, these are certainly three-dimensional experiences. Question is, how can a two-dimensional surface be able to subsume information in a three-dimensional space? The story of brain is rather complicated and complex, but let us keep it simple. Assume we cut the three-dimensional space into slices which are so thin the thickness is almost zero. Next, we assemble these slices together and form a sheet. Now we get a brain. This brain then represents the three-dimensional space. This brain now becomes the visual function of our consciousness. Assume we are living in a virtual reality. To be realistic, the designer and programmer will have to do similar programming where the brains will be some forms of virtual storage with each representing our different senses. Hence, brains in string theory are the visual functions of our consciousness and the image functions are the strings that are attached onto the brains. The strings attached on the brains are the direct interacting conditions, which is like the electrical signals on the goggles of one living in the metaverse. Whatever happen in the metaverse, similar to what is in our phenomena space, can never be the interactive conditions as they are just projection. Are there strings representing color, sound, smell, taste, and touch? Yes, certainly. M-theory is said to contain infinitely number of massless particles but are discarded by string theorists as they think they are useless. These could very well be the qualia we are looking for. Ad-CFT correspondence is the most valuable of all, and it is also the strangest of all. This conjecture predicts two universes. One is a contracting universe which is called the anti-de Sitter space. On this side of the universe, there is only gravity with no quantum field theory. This doesn't look like our universe. On its flip side is another universe with one dimension lesser, is an expanding universe which is familiar to us. On this side, there is only quantum field theory with no gravity. The contracting side is said to be separated from the expanding side by an invincible and impenetrable wall. It is like a universe in a bottle. The boundary space between the two is said to be where the universal hologram resides. That is why physicists seriously believe our universe is a projection of the hologram. The strange thing is that these two universes, though are completely different, yet the mathematics on one side can reconstruct the mathematics on the other side. Some very difficult problems on one side can be easily solved using the mathematics on the other side. What is this? Two completely different things yet are also completely the same. Some physicists think that it has nothing to do with our reality. But if it has nothing to do with our reality, why is it so useful? Notice when Juan Maldacena proposed this in 1997, he started with type 2b string. It can be said that AD-CFT correspondence sums up all the discussion we had before on both string theory and Yogacara Buddhism. It is our reality. That is why it is so useful, because it is real. This is the functions of creating inner body and external world by eighth consciousness in Yogacara Buddhism. We have covered this before when we talked about seeds and phenomena, where phenomena include activation of consciousness. Type 2b string, which is effect of same order, was used because Maldacena was calculating black holes. As we have discussed before, black hole is a conscious being. Therefore, what the calculation has derived are the inner body of a black hole and the external world to the black hole, which is exactly what is said in Yogacara Buddhism about eighth consciousness. Conscious beings with physical bodies are universes in a bottle. We have shown that the hologram bothering the two sides is not simply a hologram, it has hidden active elements such as 6 indriyas with its structured storage. It is called the 12 ayatana or dhatus. Dhatus also means seeds or strings which are hidden, dormant, but with active potential. 12 ayatana and dhatus are also said to be the source of all laws and where consciousness arise. Since string theory can be used to calculate black holes, can string theory be used to calculate human beings? Certainly, that is truly the meaning of theory of everything. Because black holes are fourth jhana beings, they have only sixth mind consciousness, mental formation factor is the least of all. It has gotten rid of 4 out of 5 sensations factors and left only with indifference. Therefore, they are very easy to calculate. But calculation for human beings will be much complex because of the complex and complicated mental factors with strong desires. This chart shows how mental factors are related to physical factors based on the 5 aggregates. We haven't had time to talk about indriya, especially the 22 indriyas. Indriyas are not physical. Indriya has the meaning of enhanced power and being superior. That's what we see in heterotic strings after type 2 strings are crossed with bosonic string with 22 extra dimensions. In Yogacara Buddhism, the 22 are the most important of all as part of superior conditions. During the time of the Buddha, other schools had indriyas number from 1 to above 100. One day, someone came to ask the Buddha, "How many indriyas are there?" The Buddha answered without hesitation, "There are 22. Why such a strange number 22 is something still being discussed in Buddhism. The concept of 22 indriyas has very precise definition. It is cut 2 ways, horizontal and vertical. The horizontal definition has samsara, common, and nirvana, whereas the vertical definition has main, interact, change, and hold. Each indriya is properly defined as shown in the table. But what is the use of such definition to physics? It can be said that the Buddha was trying to keep it simple to the people then, but there are deeper meaning, especially in Yogacara Buddhism, where 22 indriyas are not only related to superior conditions, but also to seeds that are going to be ripened divergently. To keep it simple, for seeds and consciousness to create and project the entire universe, there must be some fundamental and basic structure. 22 indriya is the foundation structure. As shown in the diagram, it is related to all levels of science with its vertical definition. It could also be responsible for the supersymmetric properties with its horizontal definition, but that will be a discussion too far to go for now. Some string theorists say that Calabi-Yau manifolds is the DNA of the universe, then these 22 will be the microcodes of the universe. We now need to cover a very important concept of Yogacara Buddhism, as the external physical world is co-created and shared. This diagram shows what are shared and to what extent they are shared. For example, N has her mental factor private. That is not shared and not shared. These are her metal aggregates. Note that Yogacara Buddhism defines two types of sensory organs, pure and physical. Pure organs are sensory organs that can directly give rise to consciousness. These are not what we or current science understand as physical organs, which are illusion. These pure organs are the respective indriyas shown in the previous slide as 22 indriyas, which are universal forms of energies. These pure organs are not shared and not shared. For N's body, though it is not shared but also shared, as she can donate her blood and her organs. Other people like Bob can accept her blood donation, so Bob must be part in co-creating her blood or even entire physical body. Her physical organs are illusionary sensory organs which are tightly correlated to her sensory experiences from the pure organs. The physical organs, different from the pure organs, are not shared but shared. Shared and shared to N's are the rivers, the mountains, the universe, the stars, and Bob's physical body. Shared and not shared to N's are her properties like her house, cars, and the food she enjoys. From N's perspective, N's body is not shared but shared, as many other beings, like Bob, are co-creating her body. To N, Bob's body is shared and shared. But from Bob's perspective, it is the reversed. If it is too complex to understand, just imagine there are 4 areas of storage for substance, A, B, C, and D. These storage areas are maintained by seeds of 8th consciousness, as previously mentioned. This is locality and non-locality existing together, and hence why there are 5 superstrings, as depending on your perspective, different version of superstring needs to be used. For example, when type 2b is used to calculate a black hole, it is from the perspective of the black hole itself. Now, let us look at the concept of space-time. What space-time is still being debated today in physics. Newton told us space-time was absolute, but 300 years later Einstein showed us that space-time is relative. When it comes to string theory, space-time is emergent. We learned earlier, in Yogacara Buddhism, space-time belongs to a category of laws called non-interactive, which are fake laws. Space-time is said to be the differentiation amongst the 5 aggregates, which are consciousness, mental formations, sensations, perceptions, and forms. As the 5 aggregates with its leading aggregates of consciousness arise from seeds, therefore, space-time is the results of interactions of seeds. In string theory, it's almost as if the space and time dimensions of the universe are a backdrop to the interactions of strings, with no real meaning on their own. String theorists have caught up in the understanding of what space-time is. So, as what David Gross likes to say, space-time is doomed. Now, let's move on further with superspace, extra dimensions, and ordinary space-time. Let us first listen to David Gross.
But I want you to remember that when you read in the paper that physicists at CERN have, if they announce they've discovered something which looks like what theorists tell them might be supersymmetry, what they're really discovering is quantum dimensions of space-time. It will be correct to say then, in fact, it would be incorrect not to say that we don't live in ordinary space-time, but we live in superspace. The fact that you aren't aware of these extra dimensions begs the question, how are you aware of the ordinary dimensions? Space-time, I'll remind you, is a mental construct. You don't feel space-time. You don't see space-time. You have, as an infant, somehow, miraculously, while your brain was developing, constructed a model of physical reality that placed it in space and in time. But it's only a model constructed by biological.
Notice that Gross said, 1. We don't live in ordinary space-time, but we live in superspace. 2. Ordinary space-time is a mental construct. 3. The fact that you are unaware of these extra dimensions beg the question, how are you aware of the ordinary dimensions? So, the next question is, what is real or fake? Yogacara Buddhism is also often called consciousness only or mind only. The reason being, all that happen in the phenomena space are fake or not real. What really exists are each own's consciousness in understanding them. It is not so easy to understand this concept. It was repeatedly mentioned that consciousness in Yogacara Buddhism are more like energies, or as described, more like motherboard design with processor chips with interconnectivities. So, let us use computer as example. All the images that are shown on the screens are not real. The real ones are the computer and its motherboard, and of course its screen. Therefore, Yogacara Buddhism is called consciousness only or mind only. On the contrary, string theorists or physicists are more interested in the phenomena space with ordinary space-time, gravity, quantum theories, and particles physics. To them these are their goals or real. These to Yogacara Buddhism are like what are shown on the computer screen, which are fake. They don't know what extra dimensions, nor the brains are. They only use them as tools. To refresh our memory, the apple that Anne sees are not the actual apple in the projection, but the apple is Anne's image function of her eye consciousness, that is being interacted by Anne's visual function of her eye consciousness. This is what Gross said, we don't live in ordinary space-time, but we live in superspace, and the fact that we are unaware of these extra dimensions beg the question, how are you aware of the ordinary dimensions? So, Gross realizes what is taught in Yogacara Buddhism, but Gross's view here might not represent the view of the string community. String theory is 100% mathematics of Yogacara Buddhism, and all string mathematical conjectures and objects are essential components of Yogacara Buddhism. There is one point in this diagram which was not covered. Dr. James Gates has a version of string theory which doesn't have extra dimension. But he found error correction codes. In Yogacara Buddhism, this is part of the functions of consciousness, which is self-checking. David Gross said, you can't put string theory on a t-shirt because we don't know what the equations are. We don't know the organizing principle. There is a very ill-understood M-theory generalization. String theory is not a theory but a framework. This block diagram here could be printed on a t-shirt. Anne talks about her father. My father works in a biscuit company after graduating from the university. He likes to watch football games. Bob talks about his father. My father works in a cookie corporation after finishing college. He likes to watch soccer. The father they both described is the same father. This is what happened in Yogacara Buddhism and string theory. Different terms are used with the same meaning. Entire dharmas or laws of the universe in Yogacara Buddhism is called theory of everything. Seeds of first six consciousness in Yogacara Buddhism is called strings vibrating in 6 extra dimensions. 5 effects in Yogacara Buddhism is called 5 superstrings. Effect of same order in Yogacara Buddhism is called type 2b string. Man-made effect in Yogacara Buddhism is called type 2a string. Superior effect in Yogacara Buddhism is called E8 times E8 heterotic string. Ripen divergently in Yogacara Buddhism is called SO32 heterotic string. Effect of nirvana in Yogacara Buddhism is called type 1 string. 8th consciousness in Yogacara Buddhism is called M-theory with 11th dimension. 7th consciousness in Yogacara Buddhism is called F-theory with 12th dimension. First 6 consciousness in Yogacara Buddhism is called 6 extra dimensions. Effects as causes through different cause conditions become different effects in Yogacara Buddhism show up as dualities. 8 consciousness in Yogacara Buddhism shows up as total 8 extra dimensions. 22 indriyas in superior conditions, which is the most significant in Yogacara Buddhism, is called 22 extra dimensions in bosonic string, which is in heterotic strings. Effect of same order from direct cause, which is the most important in Yogacara Buddhism, is called type 2b string in F-theory, or antifolding, ad/CFT correspondence, and used in black hole physics. Form beings at fourth jhana in Yogacara Buddhism is called black holes. 3 realms in Yogacara Buddhism is called anthropic principle. Infinite conscious beings in Yogacara Buddhism shows up as parallel universes. 12 ayatana or dhatus in Yogacara Buddhism is called hologram. Visual and image functions of consciousness in Yogacara Buddhism are called brains and strings on brains. Inner body and external world, functions of eighth consciousness in Yogacara Buddhism is called ad/CFT correspondence. Space-time is fake law in Yogacara Buddhism reflects in the realization that space-time is doomed or emergent. Consciousness only or mind only in Yogacara Buddhism reflects in the realization that we live in superspace. Self-checking function of consciousness in Yogacara Buddhism shows up as error correction codes. Infinite seeds in eighth consciousness in Yogacara Buddhism is called infinite massless particles or strings in M theory. More can be said. The above analysis has shown beyond doubt that string theory is 100% mathematical version of Yogacara Buddhism. Therefore, the diagram drawn by Taigzu in 1927, based on Yogacara Buddhism theory documented 1,600 years ago, is not a coincidence to be matching the string theory diagram drawn at least 68 years later. This is undeniable proof. With string theory now deriving the mathematics of Yogacara Buddhism, we shall now go through the insights and implications. This itself deserves a separate discussion as the list is very long. For example, science will need a totally different view of cosmology. String theory will be the theory that truly unifies not only physics but upper levels of science like chemistry, biology, and so on. We will discuss 3 which are more crucial and the most difficult. Metaverse nature of reality. Historical paradigm shifts after each unification. What is general relativity and quantum mechanics? Today, application of metaverse is fast gaining popularity, but we don't realize we are actually living in a true metaverse. It is said in Yogacara Bhumi Sastra that all phenomena vanish within a split second without exception, they do not even stay for a moment let alone have any effect. Also, according to Yogacara Buddhism, there are infinite number of eighth consciousness in the universe, where each serves as all other superior conditions. To understand the above concepts, let us start with Kevin. Kevin has his own eighth consciousness, which is the M theory 11th dimension. Kevin's eighth consciousness first creates the physical body image of Kevin, at the same time the external world to Kevin. It was mentioned that the physical body image is the ADS part, where the external world is the CFT part of the ADS/CFT correspondence. Larry also has the same as Kevin. How Kevin can see Larry is Kevin's eighth consciousness depends on Larry's eighth consciousness as superior condition. This is how Kevin's eighth consciousness projects the image of Larry to Kevin. Everything that happen in the phenomena space are just like the LED dots in the monitor screen, where they vanish within a split second. Therefore, naturally, effects do not happen in the phenomena space. In fact, nothing exists there. This is called the imaginary nature in Yogacara Buddhism. The real effects are taking place in the ontological space, where everything works under the law of cause conditions as in Taigzu's diagram. This is like what happened in the metaverse, where the real effects take place in the computing logics. This is called the dependent nature in Yogacara Buddhism. Therefore, according to Yogacara Buddhism, we are already living in a true metaverse since the infinite past. If we finally leaving the metaverse, it is called the ultimate reality nature in Yogacara Buddhism. We shall now look at the paradigm shifts required with string theory being the mathematics of Yogacara Buddhism. Historically, in the history of physics, there have been several unifications. But to keep it short, we shall just look at the gravity side and leave out the parts on Faraday, Maxwell, quantum mechanics, and particle physics. Let us start with the heliocentric model proposed by Nicholas Copernicus. He had to abandon the geocentric model. When it comes to Newton, he unified all the forces of movement in his law of universal gravitation, where there is no predesignated center as in heliocentric model. Einstein had to abandon the absolute space-time mindset to establish his theories of special and general relativity. String theory has shown that space-time is emergent rather than relative. String theory has also shown that gravity is a must without presence of mass nor energy. This means we have to abandon general relativity. String theorists are still working within the boundary mindset of general relativity and quantum mechanics. But the fact is that there is no more general relativity and quantum mechanics where there are only 5 effects or 5 superstrings. This leap is huge to a consciousness science. Whereas the previous steps are relatively small. As mentioned, string theory has shown that space-time is emergent rather than relative and gravity is a must without presence of mass nor energy. This means the fundamental assumptions of general relativity are wrong. On the other hand, nobody has ever experienced any quantum effect in quantum mechanics. The two are also mutually exclusive. Therefore, neither general relativity nor quantum mechanics describe the true reality. The true reality is that there are only 5 effects or 5 superstrings. When we are using Newtonian law to launch rockets, that does not mean that we think space-time is absolute. It is simply because Newtonian gravity is sufficiently accurate enough to launch rockets. So, what is general relativity and quantum mechanics? We now have to go to Yogacara Buddhism again. It is said that there are 2 aspects within each of the 5 effects. They are called the self-effect and the environmental effect. The self-effect can be viewed as one's base scenario while the environmental effect is kind of an optional or enhanced scenario. General relativity occupies higher percentage of the self-effect or base scenario whereas quantum mechanics takes up higher percentage of the environmental effect or optional scenario. This is shown in the table with the 5 superstrings. As every version of superstring has both general relativity and quantum mechanics, therefore, there is really no more general relativity and quantum mechanics, all there is are just 5 effects or 5 superstrings. We are now at the dawn of a brand new era of science. One that is based on consciousness and conscious actions. The faster we abandon the old thoughts, the faster we will be moving forward. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.